it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to have fun creating a card today, and I'm going to give you lots of kind of tips and tricks to keep taking your card making to the next kind of level. Lots of little things that you can do that make a card that's not quite where you want it to be and change that. So I'm starting off today. This is almost going to be a one color card. It's kind of a white and orange, and that's it. So I have this stamp set here. This is the Queen Anne's lace stamp set, and I love this beautiful big image in the middle. But sometimes I can find it hard to use these ones. There's not a whole lot to color in. It's kind of more of a solid image. So we are going to take this stamp and make it into something really gorgeous on a card today. So I am popping this into my stamping platform, and I'm going to use some VersaMark. Now when you just use plain VersaMark and stamp it down onto cardstock, it will give you a tone-on-tone look, so a slightly darker version of whatever color is underneath it. And you can definitely just stamp your way around a card just like that. So you can see this pretty clearly here, but I want to add a little bit more. So you will see here I'm going to gently shift this very, very slightly to the right about 1 millimeter and down also, just about 1 millimeter, not very much at all. And here I'm checking if I've got the right kind of spacing, because I want this to create a small drop shadow. Now I'm going to use this is a white pigment ink. This is the unicorn one from Hero Arts, and this is the one that I use. I've used it for a long time, and I definitely find this one the best one at the minute. So I am going to stamp this down. I just use my sleeve to kind of rub over it and to get some nice even pressure. And then it is a little bit hard to see this on camera, but you can kind of see there is a little shadow created. I'll give you a close-up, and when the camera focuses you can kind of see that there is a small drop shadow to the right of the image, and that is what I'm going for. Again, this is just a really small detail that can go a long way to helping the image kind of stand off the cardstock. So that is one little thing that we are going to do first up. But I must admit, at the moment, the image kind of seems a little bit plain. So we are going to work on this and kind of keep working on our project. Now, nothing I do in this card today is crazy or, hard techniques or anything. It's just all these little tips and tricks put together ends up for a really nice card, I think. Anyhow, and I hope you think as well. So I am just going to trim this down. I'm going to give this a really good border on this card. It doesn't matter what you trim it down to, just make sure that it's even on all sides. And I wanted to create a nice big border because we are going to do some stamping behind our front panel there. So I have got a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. And to me, this is looking a little bit plain at the moment, so we're going to move on to the next small detail that we're going to do. And I've shown you this trick many times before, but I'm going to take some low-tack tape. This one is the mint tape that I purchased from scrapbook.com. I love this tape. I've told you lots of times I did a lot of research and I purchased a lot of low-tack tapes. And this one was good, the best by a long way. So I'm using the same unicorn white pigment ink that I did to stamp it, and I'm just using a blending tool or a finger dauber, anything that works, even a makeup sponge, and reusing that same piece over and over, and I have created a little white border. Now it's not thoroughly white because I'm doing it on top of orange cardstock, but then I decided I wanted to round the corners as well. Now I must admit that this tool is new to me. I have been using it a little bit, and when I bring a tool into my craft room, I really want to make sure that I'm going to use it a lot. So I'm going to try my best and make sure that I make the most of that tool. I snipped a piece of copy paper because once I rounded the corners, I ended up with that little bit there missing. So I rounded the corner on just a little piece of scrap copy paper, just a really thin piece. And then this way, I just line it up on both sides and then fill in that little bit of corner so that my white border that we created with ink is nice and continuous and looks like it was always meant to be like that. Now, if I had thought about it, I would have rounded the corners first before I even inked the little border, but I didn't. And again, this is just one of those little things that you can do to step it up. So now it has a really nice little white border around the outside without adding any extra cardstock or any more weight with more layers of paper. Then we are going to use a sentiment. You guys have seen this one lots and lots of times before. This is a huge favorite of mine, and I'm going to just pop on the happy birthday one because I always need these in my stash. These are always the ones that when people come and grab cards out of my stash, they always reach for the happy birthday ones. And I don't want to add any new colours at all, so I'm just going to use some VersaMark sticky embossing ink, and then I am going to make sure I use my anti-static powder bag before I stamped, and this is stamping onto some vellum. And again, I've got lots of white and orange going on in this card, so I'm just going to add some white embossing powder. Now the reason that I'm using vellum is because I don't want to block the image from behind, I don't want to block the orange, but I do want to make sure that you can read the sentiment clearly and that it stands out enough and doesn't get lost on my page. So I have heat set that with my heat gun, and then I'm going to trim it down just to be a nice thin strip. And I will pop this aside to pop on my card soon. Then for the background here on my actual card base, this is the card base, and I'm going to steal this stamp set here because it has this little circle. I'm not using them for snowmen or anything, I just really like the circle, and it's good to get lots of different uses out of our stamp set. I'm going to take some orange ink and stamp off one time on my scrap paper behind it there, because if I use the full strength ink it would take over the image too much, and I definitely want this to just be a background. So I'm stamping off and then stamping onto my paper, then inking it up and stamping off again and then stamping onto my paper, just so that it is not too bright. And then once I have covered that, I'm not worried about the middle because I know that will all be covered up by my front panel. And I still feel like this is a little bit, there's a few more things that we can do. So once this is all stuck down, when I am nearly finished, that's when all the little finishing touches will come together, and we'll add a couple of ones that really make a big difference. So I have my little piece of vellum here which I have wrapped around the card. I've got a couple of pieces of double-sided tape there that I'm going to adhere one side down to, and then what I like to do to stop the vellum bowing up, because I often find that vellum kind of doesn't sit nice and flat with the card, so it's worth putting a couple of tiny little pieces behind some of the letters, and that way there's just enough adhesive to hold it down nice and flat and flush with the card. Then I have got all four sides covered in some double-sided adhesive with my little trick of taking back each one of the tabs, and then there's a little piece of double-sided tape in the middle. Once I have it all lined up, I press the middle with my thumb, and then I am able to take out the tabs and everything is perfectly lined up. So that's my little trick, and it works every single time for when you need those layers to look nice and even. Now here the card kind of looks okay, it looks fine, but there's a couple more things I want to do. First up, I have, this is just a cheap and cheerful white ink pen. Now there are lots of great pens out there. I have tried the Uniball pen. I just don't have success with it for whatever reason. I can't get it to kind of be nice and bright white and flow nicely. I've bought several of them, so I just went for these kind of cheap and cheerful ones, and I'm just adding a little bit of white ink to some of the stems to bring them out a little bit more, because by now that white pigment ink has kind of dried, and I heat set it to make sure that it wasn't going anywhere. And then this one here really makes a big difference. So this is just the white Nouveau drops, and I think this is the white gloss color. And I am just barely pressing the bottle to get these tiny little drops out. And again, this just adds one of those little details that really makes those little flowers stand out so much more. All those little bits, it gives it a different point from the rest of the stems and the rest of the parts of the flowers. So I feel like these little details can really make your card. Now I will try and leave links to anything that I can find still available in the description box below. Sometimes you have to click that little grey arrow, that down arrow, to be able to see the supply list. And I will also leave links to my Facebook page, which is a beautiful group of people. We have an amazing supportive group there, and you can post your pictures and share photos of your creations with us. That would be so lovely. And so I will leave a link to that below as well, and my Instagram and all those wonderful things. And I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you later. Bye.